It was supposed to be just another quiet Saturday morning. I was in my Chicago apartment wearing my nicest pajamas and sipping coffee. When I clicked the link my dad had sent, "You can still be part of Khloe's big day," he'd said after our argument. "We're streaming it live." And so I did. I watched my younger sister's wedding unfold from 1,000 miles away, thinking I'd only miss the awkward family hugs and overpriced chicken. What I didn't expect was to witness her entire life unravel on camera. The screen froze on chaos, Khloe screaming, champagne glasses midair, people pushing, crying, yelling. I tried refreshing, rebooting, praying it was just a glitch, but deep down I knew that image stuck in time was more real than anything that came before it. My name's Rachel. I'm the sister who didn't show up, but I saw it all. Khloe was born on a rainy Thursday 3 years after me with a full head of golden hair and the kind of smile that made old ladies coo in grocery stores. From the moment she came home, she was sunshine, while I was the storm that came before. That's how Mom used to joke about us, and maybe it was always meant to be that way. Growing up, Khloe and I were inseparable. We built pillow forts, performed cringy dance routines for our parents, whispered secrets under blankets with a flashlight between us. I protected her from bullies in the 3rd grade. She helped me cheat on my geometry homework in high school. She was the gentle one, the peacemaker. I was the loud defender, always ready to fight for us, and for a while we balanced each other. But things changed slowly and quietly, like a song fading out. In high school, Khloe blossomed into this poised, graceful presence, captain of the dance team, always perfectly dressed. Meanwhile, I dyed my hair purple and joined the debate club just to argue with adults. Teachers compared us. So did our relatives. "Why can't you be more like Khloe?" was a familiar refrain at dinner. Still, I adored her. When our parents went through a rough patch, it was me who stayed up late helping Khloe with homework while Mom and Dad fought downstairs. When she got into her dream college, I screamed louder than anyone. I helped her move in, made her a playlist for her first semester, mailed her care packages filled with snacks and notes. Even when I made the choice to move to Chicago after graduation to take a job in digital marketing, far from home, I always checked in. Every Sunday night, we'd video chat. Khloe would tell me about her kindergarten students and the new recipes she was trying. I'd show her my latest thrift store finds. Despite the distance, we stayed close. And then Evan happened. They met at a charity fundraiser, but it wasn't their first encounter. Khloe said they'd gone to high school together. He was a year older, already part of the local royalty, with a last name attached to 3 car dealerships and a foundation bearing his grandfather's name. At first, I was happy for her. He seemed sweet, attentive. She looked radiant whenever she talked about him. They got engaged a year later. The ring was massive, the announcement dramatic. Mom cried. I toasted from afar, promising to be the most enthusiastic bridesmaid on earth. But beneath my congratulations, I felt something twist inside me. Not jealousy, not quite. It was something more like unease. The unease didn't come from Evan himself, at least not at first. It was more in how Khloe began to change. Slowly, subtly, her bright colors faded into pastels. She stopped telling stories about the chaotic joy of her classroom and started quoting Evan's mother about proper presentation and social image. She canceled our Sunday calls more often, citing brunches with his family or charity planning meetings. When I visited home for Thanksgiving, it was like walking into someone else's house. Khloe had redecorated Mom and Dad's living room with minimalist decor and crystal vases. Evan was polite but distant, always scrolling through emails. And Khloe, she floated around like a hostess at a country club, smiling too widely, always adjusting things that didn't need fixing. That night, as we lay in our old bedroom, now guest space with matching duvets and no trace of our childhood, she whispered, "Do you ever feel like you're outgrowing your old self?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to say I missed the girl who sang into hairbrushes and stayed up all night baking cupcakes for no reason, but instead I said, sometimes, because I didn't want to ruin her moment. But deep down, I feared Khloe wasn't growing. She was disappearing. And I was the only one who noticed. Looking back now, I realized that was the moment I should have said something, should have asked harder questions. But when someone you love seems happy, even if the smile doesn't reach their eyes, it's easier to believe them than to confront what feels wrong. And so I smiled back. That was the last time Khloe and I felt truly close, before wedding planning took over. Before dresses and diets and disagreements replaced late night talks. Before everything fell apart. It started with the bridesmaid dresses. The group chat lit up with photos of chiffon gowns in muted beige, colors that looked elegant on Khloe and her fair-skinned friends but made me resemble a walking mushroom. I jokingly suggested something with a bit more color, maybe even a different cut for comfort. Mom replied with a single thumbs down emoji. Khloe sent a voice note, her tone tight. "The dresses are already ordered. I thought you were okay with it." I told myself it wasn't worth pushing. It was her wedding after all. Then came the phone call about the dress fitting. I'd gained a few pounds since the holidays, not much, just enough to make certain silhouettes uncomfortable. Mom's voice was chipper in that carefully veiled way of hers. "Sweetheart, I found a diet plan online that really worked for one of the news anchors on TV. Maybe you could try it before the fitting next week." Paused. "Are you saying I need to lose weight?" "Oh no, it's a very form-fitting dress, darling. We just want everything to look perfect in the photos, you understand, right?" It wasn't just about the dress, it never was. As wedding prep intensified, my role shrank. Khloe assigned the maid of honor title to Jessica, someone she'd known for only 5 years, compared to my lifetime. I told myself it made sense. Jessica lived nearby, was involved in every meeting, every tasting, every dress rehearsal. Still, the sting stayed. One night, I asked Khloe, "Why didn't you even ask if I wanted to be maid of honor?" She hesitated. "Because I needed someone I could count on, not to make it about themselves." I didn't have a response, just silence. From then on, I participated from a distance, reacted to messages with "wow" and "so beautiful," sent heart emojis, swallowed my feelings, but each update felt like a reminder of how little my opinion mattered. I wasn't just a side character in Khloe's story, I was an inconvenience. When the formal invitation arrived, it was addressed to Miss Rachel Carter, without even a handwritten note. Inside was a mass-printed insert with wedding instructions. It felt cold, generic, like I was just another guest. I called to confirm I'd attend, mostly out of obligation. We talked briefly about schedules, lodging, attire. Then Khloe asked, "Are you still planning to wear your hair down? It's just, the photographer said uniform looks are cleaner." "My hair is curly, Khloe. I've always worn it that way." "I know, but maybe for once." That was it, the tone, the implication. I wasn't good enough the way I was. I told her I'd think about it. I didn't. Days later, during a tense video call, the conversation spiraled. I mentioned how I felt increasingly excluded, like a prop instead of a sister. Khloe said I was being sensitive. Mom chimed in, reminding me how hard Khloe was working to please everyone. I snapped, "Except me." It ended with Khloe saying, "If you're gonna ruin this for me, maybe it's better if you don't come." And then Dad called. "You can still be part of her day," he said quietly. "We're hiring a professional stream. Maybe it's less pressure for everyone." That night, I stared at my ceiling, heart pounding. It wasn't just about a wedding, it was about being erased, piece by piece. The next morning, I received a text from Jessica, not Khloe, asking if I could arrive earlier than the rest of the bridesmaids for makeup trials. "We want to make sure we have enough time for adjustments," she wrote. Adjustments. Like I was a technical problem to be managed, not a person. That's when I realized it wasn't just about aesthetics or logistics. I was being managed, positioned. trimmed to fit into a picture they'd already framed without me. I cried in my car during lunch break, not just out of sadness, but from the aching weight of being measured and found lacking by your own family, of being told in quiet, smiling ways that who you are, your size, your voice, your presence is too much, or worse, not enough. That was the week I decided I wouldn't go. Not to hurt Khloe, but to protect myself. The morning of the wedding, I treated it like a strange ritual. I lit a candle, put on the navy dress I'd bought for the ceremony, curled my hair, arranged a snack platter, poured myself a glass of chilled rosé, and set my laptop on the coffee table. I clicked the live stream link 10 minutes early. It buffered, then buffered some more. I was just about to refresh again when the image flickered to life. Clearer than I expected. The country club garden was pristine, sunlight glinting off crystal centerpieces. Khloe looked radiant, standing by a white arch draped in pale roses. But her smile was taut. Her eyes flickered nervously toward Evan's side of the family. As the ceremony began, everything appeared picture perfect. Bridesmaids floated down the aisle. The music was soft, elegant. Evan stood in a custom tux, looking like every inch the charming groom. But something felt off. His mother, Patricia, whispered intently to the wedding planner. Jessica kept checking her phone. Even through the screen, I sensed tension. Then came the reception. The ballroom was a dream of chandeliers and pastel florals. Guests clinked glasses. The DJ introduced the couple for their first dance, Ed Sheeran's Perfect. Khloe smiled at Evan, eyes full of hope. That was the last peaceful moment. As the dance ended, Patricia took the mic. "We've prepared a little surprise for our lovely newlyweds," she said, voice dripping with pride. Khloe froze. She hadn't expected this. The lights dimmed. A screen dropped. A slideshow began. Evan as a boy with his family at prom. Sweet nostalgia. Until the photos shifted. A blonde woman appeared, laughing beside Evan in increasingly intimate photos. Kissing at a winter formal, holding hands on a ski trip, at a Christmas party dated just 6 months ago. The room went silent. Khloe turned to Evan. "Who is she?" Evan's voice cracked. "An old friend." Patricia cut in, voice firm. "Diana, from Greenwich. They were engaged before you." "What is this?" Khloe whispered. "Some cruel joke?" Patricia shook her head. "Diana is the right fit. You were the experiment." Gasps echoed. Someone knocked over a glass. Jessica ran toward the AV booth. Too late. Khloe stood alone in the spotlight, her face pale, her hands shaking. "You were cheating on me?" Evan tried to speak. "It's complicated." She laughed, a dry, brittle sound. "No, it's simple. You used me. Your mother planned this." "I wanted to tell you," he started, but Khloe held up her hand. "Save it." The chaos exploded. Khloe hurled her bouquet at Evan. Patricia shouted. My dad, on screen, rose from his seat, protective and furious. Evan's father demanded the ring back, calling it a family heirloom not meant for outsiders. Khloe stared him down. "I'm your family now," she said, her voice rising. "Or did everyone forget what just happened?" But no one forgot. No one forgave. Jessica slipped Khloe an envelope. Hotel receipts, dated texts, all proof Evan had lied. "You were going to Bora Bora with her?" Khloe asked. Evan didn't deny it. Instead, he muttered, "I need air," and moved toward Diana, who had just walked in, wearing a red dress like she owned the room. That's when the live stream froze. And for a moment, I thought maybe it was better that way. But I knew deep down that things were only getting worse. When the live stream sputtered back, the image that reappeared was pure bedlam. Khloe was standing with her back to the camera, her wedding dress slightly torn at the shoulder, cake smeared on the floor beside her. Guests were shouting. Someone had tripped into the champagne fountain. Diana stood smugly at the edge of the scene, completely unbothered. Patricia tried to reach for the mic again, only to be blocked by my mother, who looked like she might actually slap someone for the first time in her life. My father stepped between Khloe and Evan's dad, who was demanding the return of the ring. Again, the exchange turned physical when Evan's brother lunged for Khloe's hand. My dad shoved him back. A table tipped, glass shattered. It wasn't a wedding anymore, it was a war zone. And through it all, Khloe didn't scream, didn't run. She stood there, shaking, yes, but also steady. When someone shouted that the police had been called, she didn't flinch. When Evan pleaded with her to calm down, she turned to him with eyes that could freeze oceans. "You let this happen," she said, voice shaking but fierce. "You stood by and watched them humiliate me." "It wasn't like that," Evan said weakly. She raised the envelope again. "Was it not you who booked the Four-Season suite the same weekend you told me you were at a corporate retreat? Was it not your credit card that paid for dinner with her in Aspen?" Evan didn't answer. He didn't have to. Khloe stepped off the dance floor, her heels clicking like a gavel. "This marriage is over, and if you or your family contacts me again, it'll be through my lawyer." A gasp swept the room. Patricia rushed after her, demanding she leave the ring, the gifts, the name. But Khloe didn't turn back. Jessica followed, shielding her from the cameras and chaos. And then, once more, the stream froze. This time, for good. I sat in stunned silence, the last frame etched into my screen. My sister, walking away from the wreckage, in a white dress that no longer symbolized union, but defiance. I closed the laptop and cried. After the live stream cut out for good, I sat there staring at the frozen screen. Khloe's tear-streaked face was the last image, her mouth mid-word, her eyes holding more pain than I'd ever seen. It was 3:00 p.m. in Chicago, but I felt like time had stopped. I texted Heather, no reply, called Mom, straight to voicemail. I messaged Khloe, nothing. The silence was unbearable. That night, Sullivan wedding trended locally on social media. Strangers were posting blurry videos from inside the reception. Khloe throwing champagne, my dad pushing Evan's brother, Patricia yelling at the DJ. I saw my sister's humiliation turn into internet entertainment, and I couldn't stop it. At midnight, Heather finally called. Her voice was hoarse from crying. "It got worse after the stream ended," she said. "The police were called. Evan's brother tried to grab the ring from Khloe's hand." I nearly dropped the phone. Is she okay? "She's at your parents' house, sleeping, I think, or pretending to." Heather explained how Khloe had tried to hold herself together until Diana walked in, smug and smugger, waving around a portfolio of prenup documents. Khloe refused to sign. That's when the shouting turned physical. That's when the mask cracked. The next morning, I booked the earliest flight home. During the plane ride, I replayed every moment I'd witnessed, every time Khloe had brushed off my concern, every warning I'd failed to push harder. Guilt wrapped itself around my ribs like wire. When I walked into my childhood home, it felt like a command center. Papers on the dining table, phones ringing. Khloe sat in the living room in sweatpants, holding a mug like it was her lifeline. She looked up, her eyes were hollow. "Hey," I said, voice breaking. She nodded, barely. "You saw everything." I did. Neither of us spoke for a long time. That night, she cried herself to sleep on my shoulder like we were kids again, hiding from thunderstorms. But this storm was inside her. The days that followed were a blur. Khloe barely ate, barely spoke. My parents tiptoed around her, terrified of saying the wrong thing. I spent hours calling lawyers, friends, anyone who might help. But mostly I sat with Khloe, held her hand through the numbness. Then came Patricia's email, a formal demand to return all gifts, to sign an NDA. to issue a public apology for emotional disruption. Khloe read it in silence, then handed me the laptop. "I don't think I can do this," she whispered. And for a second I believed her. But somewhere beneath all that brokenness, I saw a flicker. The Khloe I used to know, the one who sang off-key at midnight and danced barefoot in the kitchen, she was still in there, just buried under a mountain of betrayal. That evening, we sat on the porch swing, wrapped in blankets, the autumn wind cold against our cheeks. Khloe stared into the dark yard like it held answers. "I feel like a fool," she whispered, "like I built my life out of paper and someone lit a match." "You're not a fool," I said. "You were just trying to love someone who wasn't honest with you." She sniffed. "I gave up everything, my classroom, my friends. I dyed my hair because Patricia said blondes photographed better. God, Rachel, I stopped being me. I didn't have words for that kind of grief, so I just sat there." The next day, she tried to go for a walk but turned back after a block. The sound of laughter from a neighbor's yard made her flinch. At night, she stayed awake replaying every conversation with Evan, trying to pinpoint the moment he stopped loving her, if he ever did. Mom tried to distract her with meals and home decor. Dad paced like he was waiting for a war to end, but none of us could reach her. Until the letter came. It wasn't from Evan. It was from her old school, the elementary where she used to teach, saying her former students had made a "We Miss Miss Carter" banner. They sent photos. Khloe stared at the email for 10 minutes without blinking. Then quietly, she asked, "Do you think they'd still take me back?" That's when I knew she hadn't given up. Not really. I just needed a reason to hope again. Getting Khloe back wasn't a dramatic movie montage. It was slow, uneven. Some days, she barely got out of bed. Other days, she cleaned the entire kitchen while blasting 90s pop music, like we were teenagers again. We started walking every morning, at first just around the block, then farther. Each time we passed someone walking a dog, Khloe would smile, an actual smile, not the brittle one from the wedding. She dyed her hair back to brown, quietly. No announcement, no selfies. Just one morning, she walked into the kitchen, looking more like herself than she had in months. "Blondes may photograph better," she said, "but brunettes survive the storm." She reconnected with her old school. The principal welcomed her back instantly. They offered her a position starting mid-semester. Khloe cried after the call, the kind of tears that clean you out. The lawyer we'd found, Ms. Grant, turned out to be a miracle in heels. She reviewed the prenup, the wedding contracts, even the slideshow recording from the live stream. "They're lucky we're not suing for emotional damages," she said. "You have leverage, Khloe. Use it." And she did. Khloe drafted a letter to the Sullivan family. She rejected their NDA. She returned the ring via registered mail with a handwritten note that simply said, "Not everything that sparkles belongs to you." Went to the florist and donated the unused centerpieces to the children's hospital. The wedding favors, engraved boxes with C and E forever, were repurposed for school supplies. Bit by bit, Khloe reclaimed her voice. At first, people whispered. Some blamed her for the scene, said she'd overreacted. Others called her brave. A few of Evan's friends even reached out to apologize, admitting they'd suspected the affair but hadn't spoken up. Khloe didn't respond. "Let them talk," she told me one night. "I spent too long managing everyone's opinions. I'm done." She unfollowed Evan and his family on every platform, blocked their numbers, set up a new email. Then, on a Wednesday morning, she did something I hadn't seen in months. She laughed loudly at a meme I sent her, and it wasn't forced. It was real. The girl I thought had been destroyed was slowly stitching herself back together. Not perfectly, not quickly, but completely. One night, as we sat watching old episodes of a cooking show we used to love, Khloe turned to me. "I think I want to move," she said. "It's to where? Maybe Denver, maybe somewhere that's not here. Somewhere I can be me again without bumping into ghosts in grocery stores. It was the first time she'd talked about the future in weeks. A month after the wedding, she packed up her things. Not all of them, just the pieces that mattered. Childhood books, a few framed photos, a cracked coffee mug from her first year teaching. Everything else she either donated or left behind. We drove her across state lines together. I helped her set up the tiny apartment she'd rented near a new elementary school. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. On the first night, we sat on the floor, eating takeout from paper containers. She looked around at the blank walls and empty shelves. "It's weird," she said, to start over. "But also, freeing." "I think that's called healing," I said. She smiled. "Then I guess I'm doing okay." Back in Chicago, I found myself missing her more than I expected, but every time she texted me a picture, her classroom bulletin board, the coffee shop near her building, the library where she got her new card, I felt proud. She was rebuilding, not the same life, a better one. One night she called and said, "I joined a photography class." I blinked. "The one you always said you'd try?" "Yeah," she said. "Turns out I don't need anyone's permission to be happy." That was the moment I knew. Khloe hadn't just survived. She'd returned to herself. She still had bad days, days when memories came uninvited, but she faced them with a steadiness I'd never seen in her before. One afternoon, she texted me a photo of her in the classroom, crouched beside a laughing child, holding finger paint. The caption just said, "I think I'm going to be okay." And I believed her. 2 months after the wedding fiasco, the Sullivan family requested a meeting. Their lawyer sent a carefully worded invitation to resolve outstanding matters in a civil and private manner. Our lawyer, Maids Grant, raised an eyebrow when she read it. Translation: they want damage control. Khloe didn't hesitate. "I'll meet them, but on my terms." The meeting was held at Miss Grant's office. The Sullivans arrived dressed like they were attending a press conference. Dark suits, pearl necklaces, and expressions of strategic concern. Evan looked thinner, paler, less certain. Patricia, however, was still all sharp angles and superiority. Khloe wore a navy pantsuit and no makeup. She looked radiant. They exchanged pleasantries, then Patricia began with practiced sympathy. "We've all been through a difficult time. Perhaps emotions ran high." "Ran?" Khloe asked, voice calm. "They were orchestrated." The lawyer offered a settlement and a non-disclosure agreement in exchange for Khloe's silence. She shook her head. "I'm not interested in money. I want my job back." With a letter of recommendation, "I want all wedding gifts donated to the women's shelter in my hometown, and I want a written apology to my parents." Patricia blinked. "You're not serious." "Oh, I'm very serious," Khloe said, "unless you want me to release this." She pulled out a flash drive and slid it across the table. It contained clips from the live stream, Patricia introducing Diana, the slideshow, the confrontation, every damning detail. Their lawyer blanched. "That material is confidential." "It's mine," Khloe replied, "and it's backed up in 3 places." The room went quiet. Evan finally spoke. "I never meant to hurt you." "I know," Khloe said. "You just didn't care if you did." Patricia looked ready to explode, but Evan's father nodded slowly. "We accept your terms." Miss Grant drafted the agreement within the hour. Khloe signed with steady hands. Before leaving, she looked at Patricia one last time. "Tell Diana thanks for the warning," she said. "It saved me a lifetime of regret." As we walked out, Ms. Grant whispered, "That was legendary." I agreed. After the agreement was signed, the ripple effects were immediate. The apology letter from the Sullivans was printed on thick paper, signed by each family member, and sent to our home address. My parents read it aloud with expressions somewhere between disbelief and reluctant satisfaction. Mom framed it, half as a joke, half as a reminder. Khloe contacted the elementary school where she used to teach. With the signed recommendation, she was reinstated within days. When she walked into her old classroom, students cheered. One kid handed her a flower made of construction paper. "Don't cry again, Miss Carter," he said. "You're too pretty when you smile." The local women's shelter posted a thank you photo of their staff holding boxes labeled C&E wedding gifts redirected with love. Khloe didn't repost it. She didn't need the credit. The doing was enough. A journalist from a mid-tier lifestyle blog contacted Khloe for a story. She declined politely. "This isn't content," she told me. "It's my life." Still, word got out. Patricia was quietly removed from several charity boards. Diana disappeared from social media. Evan moved to Florida, according to Heather, who heard it from someone's cousin. His LinkedIn profile changed from director of development to consultant. Khloe didn't gloat. She didn't post subtweets or revenge TikToks. She went back to work, joined a book club, bought a secondhand camera, and started photographing nature trails. But she kept the flash drive, just in case. One afternoon, she called me, voice calm and clear. "You know what feels better than revenge?" Yeah, peace. And for once, I had nothing clever to add, because she was right. Weeks later, Khloe invited me to her new apartment for dinner. She cooked vegetarian lasagna from scratch, something she never had time for when she was planning a life she didn't. We ate on her small balcony, string lights casting a soft glow. Her cat, a rescue she'd adopted 3 days after the meeting, curled in her lap. "I named her Karma," she said with a smirk. She poured us both glasses of wine. "Two beginnings," she toasted. "Not the ones you fake for a camera. The real kind, the quiet, strong, stubborn ones." "You Khloe," I added, "the woman who walked into the fire and walked out with the match." She laughed, clinked my glass. "You're dramatic." "You inspired it." That night as I drove home, I realized the real plot twist wasn't the scandal or the confrontation. It was this. Khloe had found herself not through love, but through loss. Not in a man's shadow, but in her own light. And this time, no one would dim it again. Justice didn't arrive in a single moment. It came slowly, deliberately, in waves that struck the Sullivan family where it hurt the most. Their legacy, reputation, and illusion of untouchable power. The live stream recording became our quiet weapon. Though Khloe never released it publicly, her lawyer used it strategically. The footage, combined with the damning financial documents and Diana's own text messages, left the Sullivans with little room to maneuver. They'd hoped to bully Khloe into silence. Instead, they were now the ones under siege. News began leaking to the press, not from Khloe, but from guests who had seen the chaos firsthand. A viral Twitter thread detailed the bouquet to the face moment, and soon major outlets were sniffing for more. The Sullivans scrambled to issue statements, painting the incident as a family misunderstanding, but it was too late. Patricia's seat on several nonprofit boards was quietly revoked. Her presence became toxic to the organizations she'd once controlled. Donors pulled back, invitations dried up. Ryan's father, a man who prided himself on business acumen, faced questions from shareholders. Merging with the Winters shipping empire now looked like a liability, not a coup. His image, once pristine, was tarnished by association with what the tabloids were now calling the wedding wreck of the year. And Diana, her grand entrance turned into career suicide. Photos of her in the red dress circulated alongside memes mocking her expression and tone-deaf timing. Her employer, a PR firm specializing in luxury branding, quietly let her go. Clients didn't want a scandal magnet managing their image. Ryan, the golden boy, tried to salvage his crumbling world. He issued a carefully crafted apology on Instagram, complete with a black and white photo and a caption about growth and self-reflection. Comments were disabled. The public didn't buy it. Worse for him, the Sullivan family lawyer retracted their financial support when Khloe refused to sign the NDA. The prenup, meant to protect the family fortune, became Exhibit A in a lawsuit filed by Khloe's legal team for emotional distress and breach of verbal trust. Discovery unearthed more damning communication, emails from Patricia coaching Ryan on how to handle Khloe, even suggesting how to gaslight her into compliance. At every turn, the Sullivans' web of lies unraveled. and the court of public opinion delivered its verdict. The final blow came 6 months later. A news outlet ran a story titled, "From Bride to Survivor, the Teacher Who Exposed High Society's Dirtiest Secrets." Though the article didn't name Khloe explicitly, the details were unmistakable. Her strength, not her scandal, became the centerpiece. One quote stood out: "They built an empire on silence, she shattered it with truth." That was the legacy Khloe left them, not shame, but accountability. And for people like the Sullivans, that's the most painful punishment of all. Even their attempts to rebrand failed spectacularly. A charity gala they hosted months later was met with protesters holding signs that read, "Justice for Khloe" and "We remember the wedding." The Sullivan name, once whispered with reverence, became shorthand for deception. One by one, doors closed to them. The Sullivans weren't canceled, they were exposed. And that exposure was far more enduring. Meanwhile, Khloe lived with the bittersweet knowledge that she had never wanted revenge, only respect. She hadn't orchestrated their downfall, she simply refused to protect their illusion. The irony? By forcing Khloe to the margins, the Sullivans had centered her in a story much larger than a wedding. She became a symbol, not of scandal, but of survival. And they became a warning. Anyone who believes power can excuse betrayal. The dinner was nothing fancy, just grilled vegetables, a crisp salad, and 2 glasses of red wine. But it felt like a quiet celebration. Rachel sat across from Khloe on the small balcony of her new apartment in Denver. The city lights shimmered in the distance, soft music played in the background, and a breeze carried with it the scent of late summer. 6 months had passed since the wedding disaster, and though the chaos had long since died down, the memories remained vivid. But tonight, the focus wasn't on what had been lost, it was on what had been reclaimed. "I used to think I had to be perfect," Khloe said after a long sip of wine. "Not just for Ryan or his family, for everyone, for mom and dad, for strangers at church, for society." Rachel looked up. "I know, I saw it. You changed yourself so much, I barely recognized you in the wedding photos." Khloe gave a small laugh. The blonde hair, the tight smile, the charity gala dresses. I hated every minute of it, but I kept telling myself, once we're married, I can relax. But deep down, I knew I was losing myself. Rachel nodded. "Sometimes distance helps you see things more clearly. Watching that wedding online, I finally understood just how much you were sacrificing." There was a long pause, the kind that didn't feel awkward but full of shared understanding. "I don't want to be that girl anymore," Khloe said. "I don't want to be the one who bends to fit someone else's ideal. I want to teach again. I want to wear sneakers instead of stilettos. I want to cut my hair short if I feel like it." Rachel raised her glass. "To the real Khloe." They clinked glasses gently. "You know," Rachel added, "for the longest time, I thought being the outsider in our family made me weaker, but maybe stepping away gave me the perspective I needed." Khloe smiled. "You were always brave in ways I couldn't be. Now you are too." As the evening wore on, they laughed about childhood memories and awkward first crushes. The balcony lights twinkled above them, framing the sisters in a soft glow. Before they went inside, Khloe paused, her voice quiet. "That wedding, it was supposed to be the start of my perfect life, but it ended up being the start of my real one." Rachel took her hand, and this time, "You get to write it your way." In that moment, Khloe understood. Perfection wasn't real. What was real was this: the quiet strength to walk away, the clarity to see truth, and the courage to live without the masks others handed her. And perhaps the most beautiful thing she had gained was not freedom from a toxic family, but the freedom to finally be herself. Later that night, as Rachel helped Khloe unpack a box labeled Future, they found an old Polaroid from their teenage years. Khloe in paint-splattered overalls holding a handmade sign that read "Artist in Progress." "I forgot I used to want to be a painter," Khloe said softly. "Maybe it's time to remember," Rachel replied. That photograph went on the fridge, a reminder of dreams paused but never fully erased. Because sometimes walking away from a perfect plan opens the door to a beautiful, imperfect truth.